Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest This Is the Music Meets podcast. For episode 82, I'm delighted to be joined by rising Sheffield indie rockers VIVAS as the latest guests on the This Is the Music Meets podcast. Over the course of today's episode, we're going to get the full lowdown on the band's most recent single, Bittersweat, their scintillating debut EP, As It Was, and their forthcoming UK tour. So I'm joined by Tyler from the band today. Thank you very much for coming on. It's a warm welcome to you. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. It's the pleasure's mine joining you for this, and getting the chance to obviously speak about us and my favorite topic, which is me, which I'm looking forward to.
Oh, brilliant. It was great stuff. And I hope we were just chatting there before we started. It sounds like you've had a much more relaxing day than myself in this heat that we seem to be getting. So hopefully
Definitely.
So obviously we're going to come on to the single and the EP and all that sort of great stuff that you guys have been doing this year. But really, I just kind of like to really go back to the very beginning, really, and to find out kind of like how did VIVAS form? Because I think I'm right in saying that you only sort of got together last year, so 2022. So how did you all meet?
So essentially, we knew everyone, or everyone in the band sort of knew each other, because obviously some of us had played with each other before in the past in the same band. Some of us had different bands, but essentially we kind of all knew each other from basically the music scene. So we had the opportunity. It was a brand new year, so we had the opportunity to form a new band and sort of get make sure we took everything that we learned up to that point, just mucking about in other bands and whatnot, and sort of taking that on into the next thing that we were going to be. So it was quite a natural thing to do, because actually all of us were on the same wavelength when it happened, which that's all you want as a band. You want to be on the same page as the next guy next to you. So but yeah, essentially that's how we all came together, because we were all doing our own stuff, and that's kind of how we all kind of met, really. So we formed it, and then as I say, here we are.
And the name, was there anything like specific behind the meaning of the band's name at all? Was it quite a straightforward decision to come to go with VIVAS?
Yes and no. Now we obviously it's very easy to just get together in the same room and jam out some songs. Well, at least from our experience, it is. The actual sort of brand, let's say the branding side of it, is actually a little bit alien to us in particular, because actually there's that side of things as well, especially as like a grassroots type of band. Now we wanted obviously a name that would suit sort of our style, and obviously straight to the point, and if you were to say the name, it sticks, sort of thing. So honestly, we went through must have been we just put together some random names. I mean, I haven't got the list in front of me, but you should have seen some of them. I mean, some of them were like based off Indian food, Greek food, places I've never heard of in Helsinki. Just random stuff like that. And then obviously VIVAS was just one that was suggested. And obviously from those group of names, we narrowed it down, and eventually, hey ho, VIVAS came out on top, really.
Perfect, brilliant, great stuff. So obviously the latest single, Bittersweat, came out towards the end of July. I think it's fair to say that it's had a very good reaction across social media and the radio plays as well that it's had, and all that sort of stuff. But can you maybe just give us like a little bit of insight into the track? Is there any sort of like message within the song that you're trying to get across at all?
Absolutely none whatsoever. So with that song, I've explained, I've sort of alluded to it before, where that song in particular, we had the music down. Kane wrote the music more or less,
right?
And who's our bass player? So we brought it to the studio. The music was sort of too good not to sort of bring to the studio, just because we knew that we could sort of wrinkle out or just sort of bash out some lyrics here and there in the studio. Normally, when we go to the studio, we kind of have, a good idea, if not a completed idea, of what the lyrics are for a song.
Yeah.
But as I say, it was just too good to just not bring to the studio. So we did. And what happened was our producer, Fed, brilliant producer, I can't speak highly enough of him. He got James, the singer, basically in the booth sort of thing, and he just played the track, and he told James to just relax and literally sing the first things that comes to your head. Now, obviously, that was pre-production. Now, not everything that came out of his head or came out of his mouth first stuck, but I would say about 80% of that song is what he did on pre-production takes, just randomly on the spot. So, James did a really good job with that, because he kind of has this sort of Alex Turner type vibe that he put towards the song, and it came out quite naturally, I thought.
Yeah.
And it suits the song. I think with us, it's all about, whether it be a lead guitar part or, lyrics or melody, it's all about suiting the song.
Yeah, sure. And sort of then thinking about that process, I mean, maybe it might be a little bit difficult for you to speak on James's behalf, but do you think that maybe you might revisit that style of maybe write it, or I guess more recording, I suppose, or pre-production, was the word that you used. Do you think you might revisit that sort of approach in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially for songs like that, just because obviously it's very tongue-in-cheek, off the cuff, kind of, off, rock and roll sort of thing. And, it can be a little bit less structured, if you like, just because then you capture more of the spirit of the vocal performance, which I really like in a song like that, just because it's very upbeat. It's very Arctic Monkeys, as you could probably hear, just because
definitely.
that's how James, that's what James gravitated towards too. And also the music's very, a throwback to that sort of time as well. So while obviously we'll definitely do songs like that, in the future, and actually we're surprised at the success of it, just because obviously it's not something that we had in mind. We're also obviously going to do loads of different ways to record, so there's not just one way. So that's kind of how you not become bogged down, and you kind of keep developing and learn different ideas in terms of how to record stuff and whatnot.
Yeah, sure. Okay, well, it certainly sounds quite a sort of like a bit of a sort of quite a fun thing to do. But I just want to sort of go back a couple of months prior to that, because obviously your debut EP, which was called As It Was, which consisted of four tracks, it's already amassed over 67,000 Spotify streams, which
really
apparently so I was I believe it or not, some people might be surprised. I do some research.
That's pretty good.
There you go.
It's been a while since I last checked, really, but yeah, it's pretty good, that.
There you go. So as I say, very very impressive stuff. So one of the things as well, because obviously as we mentioned there in the beginning, obviously you guys sort of formed in 2022. So why did you kind of within, what about sort of 14 months, I guess, or so roughly, why did you then make a decision to release an EP at that stage? And sort of, I guess, in a way, kind of almost go against the grain of what everybody else does. You know what I mean? Because everyone, a lot of other bands tend to sort of, release sort of, 5, 6, 7, 8 singles and then put out an EP. So why then did VIVAS feel that was the right time to put an EP out so early and so quickly?
I mean, obviously, bands and artists will do what they think's best for them, and for us, we had a number of singles before the EP, so we put out "It's All Right," "Sweet Talker," "Feel" before that EP came out, but because obviously we're such a new band to a lot of people, because obviously we only formed last year, because we're such a new band. Those tracks that obviously we released previously, there's probably some tracks that people haven't, those tracks in particular, people haven't heard, just because obviously over time, people have started to know who we are and got into us, but haven't, necessarily checked out the older songs. So we've basically, when we released the cover of As It Was, which is obviously, the song everybody knows anyway, but just
Yeah.
done in our style, we basically tagged those three other songs on the end of it. So when people are going to check out, obviously, As It Was, the next song that goes, or basically the next song that plays is, another one of our tracks that they might be into. So if you like As It Was, then the next track you hear is obviously, I can't remember what the running order was, but it's another VIVAS track, and it's that kind of way where you go to listen to one song, and then all of a sudden you're listening to a whole EP. So it's almost like a bit of a psychology trick, really, rather than just saying this is our EP and go and listen to it. Because I'd probably advise against that, just because you're basically releasing all of your load, if you like, in one. It's better to release a single staggered out, 4 singles in a year, for example, rather than 4 singles or 4 songs on an EP in one day. Because when you've put them out, you're like, oh, we haven't got anything else. So you have to wait another year maybe before you've got something else in the pipeline. So that's why we did it, really.
Yeah, sure. And I guess as well, kind of like what you're maybe this could have been part of the thought process is that you want people to listen clearly and obviously to keep coming back as well, rather than, which is what you're sort of hinting at there, that instead of only having one song and then waiting, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 months or whatever it might be.
Yeah, it just builds on that momentum, because obviously you want to be able to be seen as you're constantly moving forward. So you're constantly working on stuff, and people, even if you're not necessarily, know who we are, or you're just looking in from afar, anyone can appreciate, a band that's moving forward, who's, building, if you like, and actually, putting a lot of hard work in. And in fact, actually, those sort of, key attributes are, big draws to the band anyway. So you might not necessarily like our style of music, but you can appreciate what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And have you got a favourite track off of the EP? I might be putting you on the spot here a bit.
Well, I mean, I've listened to them about 5 million times each, just because we have to make sure that when we go and play them live, that the spot on sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because if you can't, then what's the point? So yeah, I think my personal favorite out of the 4 is probably It's All Right, just because in terms of the melody, it's something I probably gravitate towards more. But I don't have a least favorite, that's for sure. They're all amazing. Go and check them out.
Well, I definitely concur with that. There, it is a fantastic EP, and I'm sure that you are. But if you should all be very, very proud of it, because, as I say, it's a fantastic EP. So one of the things I want to focus on now is live gigs. Obviously, since forming, you've already played some fantastic and iconic venues that you've sold out, including Sheffield venues, Sydney and Matilda, and the Lead Mill. I mean, again, considering obviously as we've sort of keep coming back to it, so I do apologise. Obviously, that you got together in 2022. Are you sort of surprised that in such a short space of time that you've played and sold out those venues?
Yes and no, really. I mean, because obviously it's such a short space of time, you don't expect instant success, but it's all that is, more or less, at this stage, is just hard work, because it does require a lot of hard work to sell tickets and be a draw to people. So yes, it doesn't happen overnight, because no success happens overnight. It's all a gradual build-up. But you've got to put a lot of hard yards in, and I know for a fact that we all have. And in a way, we know how how we sold it out, and how we've moved on to the lead mill and sold that out. So it's a case of just continuing to work hard, and do things in a way that, you know, people find professional, because,
Yeah.
you know, people get gravitate towards a group of people who are, you know, do things the right way. They're not just sort of, you know, doing it for a bit of a hobby, let's say. I mean, that's absolutely fine if you want to do it as a hobby, but people are more likely to get on board with an idea if you're really, really serious about it.
Yeah.
As long as you don't pester people and, you know, make it you know, be unpleasant. You're just got to make sure that whatever you do, the people who come to your shows or listen to your music or whatever and support you, you've got to make sure that you're giving them just as much in return with whatever, you know, and people can see that, you know, if you do that, they stick around.
Yeah, sure. No, definitely. And I think as well, one of the other things as well is that I think it's become quite apparent, the more that you sort of dive into the industry sort of thing as well, is that maybe bands are trying to cut corners a little bit as well in sort of getting somewhere and stuff. But clearly that's not, you guys have got a clear focus on what you want to achieve. And that's, for me, they're definitely coming across.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, even if we go on to do nothing else, you know, we know that we've chucked everything at it, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, we don't really have any regrets at that, and we've done things we believe in the right way. You know, I do know that it's very easy to cut corners, because actually there's a lot of work that needs to be done to just move one step forward, let alone 10 or 15 to try and get into the size of Oasis or something like that.
Yeah.
But, you know, people people love the idea of being the next Arctic Monkeys, for example, and, you know, having the success, fame, and the sort of, you know, the popularity, if you like, of, you know, being in a successful band. But if you want that, you've got to make sure that the work that you put in is 30 times more than you could ever anticipate.
Yeah.
I can't stress it enough, really.
No,
we always pride ourselves on just working hard and see where it gets us, and that's it. You know, we don't really take things too seriously in that regard. Like, we don't think, oh, we need to be this at this size and at this time, and we need to be selling out this show, and we need to be. It doesn't matter really. It's just about doing things and taking things or basically progressing in your own way, essentially.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I agree there with what you're saying. But I guess one of the highlights of the year so far has been playing at Bramall Lane. For those that aren't aware, it's obviously the home of Sheffield United Football Club, obviously back in the Premier League this season, where you supported two of the biggest legends of rock music in Def Leppard and Motley Crue. I mean, have you, even now, it was at the end of May? I mean, even still, sorry, a few months on, have you still been able to process that you've shared a stage with two iconic bands?
No, like it's really weird. Like, it's something that every band, you know, would dream of, because obviously, you know, Def Leppard and Motley Crue are, you know, they're huge, the really, really good bands, and, you know, people would, you know, die to, you know, basically share a stage with a band like Def Leppard or Motley Crue, or even if it's Foo Fighters or Arctic Monkeys, Red Hot Chili Peppers, you know, a band that size, you know, bands like us will rip anyone's arm off to try and get on one of the stages. And with us, it's a case of making sure that, you know, we realize that, and we need to make sure that we do things the right way, to where, you know, any other band that would want to come in and take our place. So we needed to respect it. But it was kind of surreal seeing, you know, the likes of just both bands walking around backstage, and all the security teams and the the riders and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. It's just crazy, really, because it's like you're stepping in from one world, which is kind of the real gritty, the DIY band circuit, into a world where everything's done for you. Everything's done professionally. Everything's, basically everyone's wiping your ass almost. And it's like it's a bit of a culture shock. It was like, what are we doing here? But honestly, it's something we'll never forget. That's for sure.
Yeah, sure. And what was the day like in terms of, there you are walking out in front of what I'm guessing, 40, 50,000 people?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with me is that I'm a Sheffield Wednesday fan, so ultimately I wasn't. I was looking forward to it, but wasn't because, ultimately because it's Bramall Lane. I
Yeah, I
was
can
stupid
imagine.
with
Yeah.
that. But yeah, it was good to see it full for once. But yeah, yeah. But essentially, when we walked out, it was great because actually, even though we were on first, and it was quite early in the day. It was like off the top of my head, I think it was like 5:30 or something like that.
Yeah.
So it was quite people had finished work, But as soon as we went on stage, we were like, "There's quite a lot of people here for us," sort of thing,
Yeah.
or just at the very least, not knowing who we are, just sort of getting warmed up.
Yeah.
And having that exposure in front of that many people, not only trying to basically become their new favorite band, because that's the aim that we all have, because obviously they don't really know who we are, but also it's your chance to gain some more fans,
Yeah.
and make sure obviously you do things in the right way where you look like a band that belongs on that stage as well, not just getting swallowed up.
Yeah.
And I'm
Sure.
really proud that we kind of took it in our stride as well, because we were a bit sort of maybe naive, because literally we just went on stage like it was Sydney and Matilda again, and just play like we normally did. And I think that did actually help us, because I think if we were to just analyze it too much, would have been swallowed up completely.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I can imagine and understand totally where you're coming from. With trying to think, not let the occasion, get too big. But did you get the opportunity to hang out with either band during the day? And have you maybe got any sort of stories at all that you can maybe share with us?
Yeah, we hung out a bit with Def Leppard. They were great. Motley Crue were great as well. We didn't see them as much, just because obviously they have their own separate dressing rooms. Each band does.
Yeah.
So it was just a case of like, us passing, or we see them in just a common space. But they were all really good with us. It was just a bit surreal, because it's almost like you see them on stage, or on a computer screen in music videos, or whatever, and you think, oh, they're not really human, are they? But actually they are, and it turns out they really are. So it's yeah, they were all great with us. In terms of like rock and roll stories or anything like that from what we got from that night, not really, just because obviously with those two bands, they've been touring with each other for quite a long time now, in the past, well, let's say year or so. They needed to get off to the next city, if that makes sense.
Right.
So it's a
Yeah.
case of not having the time, and plus they're all in the 50s and 60s now, so it's more like have a cup of tea and go to bed rather than anything else. So yeah, we take inspiration, that's for sure.
No, definitely understand that. So obviously, coming back away from them bands, yourselves are going to be embarking on an 11-date tour across September. You're going to start off in Chesterfield on the 23rd of September with friends of the podcast, San Quentin, and you're going to be finishing up in Glasgow on December the 2nd. Dates are obviously a mixture of your own headline shows, and you've got a couple of support slots in there as well, with Apollo Junction, Mimosa, and Little Man Tate as well. So firstly, how excited are you to be going on on tour. But also as well, for those that maybe haven't actually caught Vivas live yet, what can they expect from your set?
Well, first of all, it's really exciting just because it's that sort of end of the year where, you know, pretty much every band's doing their own little tour or a group of shows, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's quite competitive because you want to make sure that you're one getting into the venues that, you know, have a bit of prestige. You don't want to necessarily, I mean, it's not a bad thing, but you don't want to necessarily play the dog and duck in, you know, in the sticks sort of thing, because nobody's really going to be there.
Yeah.
And obviously, you know what you're going to get from a proper venue, like let's say the Lead Mill, or just trying to think of another one, the Bunkhouse in Swansea, or the Moon. You know, there's loads of venues, just really good circuit venues, and we're just really pleased and grateful, really, because we're doing we're doing quite a few headliners, which we're really looking forward to, and sales have been way better than what we thought it was going to be, just because we're quite new, and you know, we haven't really played in many cities, to be honest. So it's just crazy to see that there is actually people there that want to come and see us, really.
Sure.
But also we're mega grateful to the likes of Mimosa, Little Man Tate in particular, because that's a homecoming show where that's at Sheffield's O2 Academy, which we're main supporting with alongside with the Shambolics.
Yeah, Shams,
that's a really good lineup.
Yeah.
And then obviously Apollo Junction with with 3 dates, and 2 of those are sold out. So it's great because you're working with bands you want to work with, because one, they've got a good following that you can, let's say, pinch a few people that are in our sort of genre of music. I mean, definitely Motley Crue were great, but let's say Apollo Junction or Little Man Tate is more our sort of scene, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
so
no, definitely.
It definitely resonates with us a bit more. However, it's just, those are the sort of bands you want to be working with, because if they're going to ask you to play with them, it means that you're doing something right, and that's a big compliment to us. So we just want to make sure, from people who come and see us, we've got lots and lots of energy, and we want to basically give that energy off to whoever comes and sees us, and hopefully by the end of the night you're ended up talking about us. So that's the main aim for us.
Yeah, sure. Okay, well, there you go. We're going to put the links to those tour dates in the episode bio. So once you finish listening to the podcast, then check out the venues. Say there's 11 dates, plenty of dates. A couple, as Tyler said, have sold out. So have a little look to see what's nearest for you, and hopefully you can get down. Obviously, as you know, here at This Is the Music, we like to try and shine a light on unsigned bands and artists that are trying to make their way on the new music scene, like Vivas. So kind of like then, over the last sort of 12 months or so, what bands or artists have you been sort of checking out?
Oh, goodness me. I mean, it's a real range, really.
Yeah.
But the main draw for me is indie rock music, and rock music, really, not just indie stuff, but a lot of 70s and 80s rock as well. Like for me, I've been a huge fan of Nothing But Thieves for a long, long time. They're a bit more sort of maybe just more of the classic rock kind of modern classic rock sort of sound, but yeah, I love throwback music. So I listen to old U2 albums, and get sort of delve quite deep into early stuff for artists, if that makes sense, because there's quite a rawness to a lot of the early stuff, whoever it is, whether it be Oasis or U2, whoever it is. There's quite a youth kind of side to it where I quite like it. I can put it on and think, I can relate to that a little bit. But stuff like that. Massively into Sam Fender and obviously Arctic Monkeys. But you can probably name loads of bands yourself, and I'll be just like, like them, don't like them, they're rubbish, etc. But
the thing is with that, I guess, is there's so many bands that are out there in a minute, and it's a great time really for British guitar music and the indie scene in particular. So yeah, long may that continue. So obviously we've spoken in the podcast so far a little bit about how the band started and obviously your single release and the EP and the tour and all that sort of stuff. But I'm going to now try and throw some sort of quick fire-ish questions, and hopefully they'll come across as being a little bit light-hearted, a little bit of fun, and just to sort of try and find out a little bit more about yourself and maybe the rest the personalities within the band. So the first one is, what is the one item that you couldn't live without?
Phone comes to mind first. I'm often on my phone all the time. I'm never off it because that's where I mostly do my work, really. So yeah, phone.
Okay, there we go. What are your 3 favourite albums of all time?
I should have got these questions before so I could think of Oh, not just saying it, but I'd probably say I had to rethink that. Oh, this is really difficult because I can name albums off my top of my head, but I'll probably forget some that I think, oh, that's actually better than that. So I'd go with Def Leppard's Hysteria is great. I can't fault that album at all. I'm gonna say Favorite Worst Nightmare by Arctic Monkeys
Yeah.
as well. And what other one? I'm gonna say the Joshua Tree by U2.
Yeah.
Quite a range there. It's either 1987 or the mid noughties. But yeah, those 3 off the top of my head.
Brilliant. Well, if we get you back on, we might ask that question again and see if those choices have changed.
Actually, I've changed my mind.
Brilliant. So, which members of VIVAS are most likely to get married to each other?
I would say me and Keaton.
Okay,
Who's the drummer?
Yeah,
Me and Keaton have been. But then again, no, I'm going to say me and Keaton just because we've known each other for a long time. So it's about time I get down on one knee, I think.
Brilliant. So which band member is most likely to run off and join a religious cult? Or a cult of any kind, we'll say.
I'm going to say me, I think. Me more than the other 3. I mean, to be honest, we're quite tame as it is, to be honest. So I would probably say me just because even though I like to think I'm quite tame in what I say and do, let's say, but I do I do have my moments, put it that way.
Okay, and which band member is always late, be it for rehearsal, turning up for gigs?
Keaton Barker. He is. I mean, it doesn't help because he doesn't drive, because that's one thing. So he's either, it's either myself or mostly Kane who picks him up or whatnot. So often that's much better now, just because if he's late, one of the others is late, so he's not necessarily the latest. But I mean, this is not just band related stuff, but stuff like going out for a meal or whatnot. He is late, like, and I'm not knocking him because actually, if I look that good, I'd be late as well, sort of thing. So there's a reason why he's late. So yeah, it's not even a contest. Keaton's always there, always late, but sometimes he doesn't turn up. But that's how it is.
Well, as long as he turns up for the gigs, that's the most important thing.
Oh, he does. Yeah, he does turn up for them.
So kind of like then, obviously we've mentioned the tour that you've got coming up, or starting at the end of this month, and obviously it's going to be going right up until first couple of days in December. So, but are there any other plans for the band across the rest of this year?
So we've got a lot of unreleased music at the moment. It's just about picking and choosing when we're going to release it, really.
Yeah.
We're really excited for the next one. Obviously we're going to say that. But we really are. It's much more sort of harder hitting, a bit more like the Ratons, if
right.
dare I say.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's much more in your face, fists up sort of thing. So we're looking forward to releasing that, but we just want to make sure everything's lined up perfectly for it and just give it the best chance, possible. But yeah, we're actually going back into the studio next month. So amidst the tour, whatever date that we have free, we're using that date as a studio day, and hopefully bash some more tunes out, the next set of tunes, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's constantly revolving. So we're pleased about that. If it's stood still, then it'd get boring, and that's something we don't want.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, it certainly sounds like it's going to be a exciting sort of 4 or 5 months for you both, either on tour or off in the studio as well. And I'm looking forward to hearing the next release coming across. But Tyler, that is unfortunately the end of the This Is the Music Meets VIVAS podcast. I thank you very much for coming on and giving up your time. It is really, really appreciated. But before I let you go, can you just let the This Is the Music listeners know the platforms, the social media platforms that they can find you on?
Yeah, so if you are listening to this for the first time and you don't really know who we are, make sure you go and check out all our socials, which is the same tag handle for across all of them. So it's VIVAS Band UK. So that's VIVAS Band UK, and we should come up as the first one that you see. Hopefully we're big enough for that now. So yeah. So if you are interested, just check us out on that, and hopefully give us a follow.
Brilliant, great stuff. We'll put those links in the episode bio as well, just to help out a little bit. But as I say, Tyler, thanks very much for coming on. You've been a great guest. I've really, really enjoyed it. And it's been
My
great
pleasure.
Just finding out a little bit more about VIVAS.
Great stuff. Thank you, guys. Cheers, mate.
And all that leaves me to say is to thank everyone for listening to the latest This Is the Music Meets podcast. If you're loving the podcast, then please subscribe and leave a 5-star rating and written review, as it does really help the bands and artists that we interview to be discovered. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you again somewhere down the road.